The phone rang at 2 a.m., its shrill tone cutting through the thick, humid night. Disoriented, I groped in the dark of my temporary quarters, heart thudding. "Emma, you need to hear this." Rachel, her voice practically purred with smugness. "I solved our little property issue. I sold the house." I sat bolt upright, adrenaline wiping away the last of my sleep. "You did what?" "Oh, don't act shocked," she said breezily. "That place has been collecting dust while you're off saving the world. Someone had to do something." "My name is Dr. Emma Chin. I'm a trauma surgeon working with Doctors Without Borders in Uganda." The house she'd just casually sold wasn't just a house, it was our childhood home, left to both of us when our parents died 2 years ago. The same house she'd been hounding me to sell for over a year. "Rachel," I said, voice low, trying to rein in the fury rising in my chest, "you can't sell the house without my consent. I'm a co-owner." She laughed, high and cutting. "Actually, I can. Remember that power of attorney you signed before you left? I used it. Sale closed yesterday, 800 grand, in cash." I froze. That document, I'd signed it thinking she'd need to make medical decisions if anything happened to me overseas. I never imagined she'd weaponize it. "The house is worth 3 million, at least," I said, struggling to stay calm. "Why would you settle for a quarter of that?" "Market's crap right now," she said dismissively, "and David's investment opportunity won't wait." Of course, David, her husband, the self-proclaimed financial mastermind with a talent for setting money on fire. "You know what?" she snapped. "You gave up your life to play doctor in Africa. You don't get to criticize me for actually doing something." She had no idea what she'd done, what she'd risked. "Who bought it?" I asked, feigning defeat. "Some development firm. They're bulldozing it next week. Condos or something." A pause. She was waiting for me to plead, to protest. When I stayed silent, she added, "I'll wire your cut, minus my finder's fee." Naturally. Rachel had always been entitled. Our parents' deaths had only sharpened the edge. "When's demolition?" "Next Thursday." "Why, you gonna fly home and stop it?" She laughed again. "Don't waste your time, it's done." But it wasn't. Behind the library wall of that house was a hidden room, one only I knew about. And in that room, beneath the concrete, was a safe. My father built it, and he trusted me with its secret. "We'll see about that," I said, and ended the call. The next few hours were chaos. I secured emergency leave, booked the earliest flight to Boston, and made several urgent calls. By sunrise, I was en route to Entebbe International Airport. On the flight home, I replayed my last conversation with Dad, days before the crash. "The safe has everything," he'd whispered, handing me the key, "accounts, documents, everything I've built. Rachel can't know, not yet. Promise me you'll protect it." I had, and after their deaths, I finally understood what he meant. Inside the safe were records that revealed his secret life. The quiet librarian had built a sprawling real estate empire worth over $50 million, hidden behind aliases and trusts, untouchable, invisible, except to me. Rachel had no idea what she'd just handed over to a demolition crew. As the plane descended into Boston Logan, I opened a message from Dad's old attorney, Benjamin Wong. "All documents prepped, meeting confirmed for tomorrow." She won't know what hit her. Rachel thought she'd finally won, that she'd outmaneuvered me. She was wrong. At baggage claim, my phone buzzed again. A text from Rachel. "Demo team walk through tomorrow. Last chance to say goodbye." I smiled. Perfect. The cab ride to my apartment felt like stepping through a dream. Boston looked the same, but everything had changed. I unlocked my apartment door, the familiar scent of dust and emptiness greeting me. My bags hit the floor with a soft thud as I glanced around. Nothing had changed. Everything was exactly as I left it, cloaked in a thin layer of dust. I headed straight to my office, moving swiftly to the locked drawer where I kept the key to the safe, along with copies of everything inside it. Proof of our father's empire, records of every property, every account, every investment he'd built over the years. Rachel thought she was selling a $3 million house. She had no idea that house was merely the facade for an empire worth 50 times that. My phone buzzed again. "Benjamin Wong, everything's set for tomorrow. Are you sure about this? It'll burn bridges with her forever." I read the message, my mind flashing back to Rachel's laugh when she gleefully told me she'd sold the house. It wasn't the first time she'd used me, manipulated me, taken advantage of my trust, and now, She had used the power of attorney I'd given her for emergencies like me being in a hospital, not for selling family property. I'm sure. Some relationships need to end. Tomorrow would change everything. Rachel thought she had won, quickly and quietly selling the house, but she was about to learn that our father had taught me far more than she ever understood. I sat down at my desk, carefully reviewing the documents I would need for tomorrow's meeting. Every detail had to be flawless, because when the dust settled, Rachel would see what true loss looked like. The next morning was crisp and clear as I pulled up to the family home for the last time. 2 black SUVs were already parked in the driveway, one for the demolition team, the other for Rachel and David. I checked my watch, 9:15 a.m., right on time. Rachel stood on the front porch with David, watching the foreman in hard hats as they did their preliminary inspections. She froze when she saw me step out of my car. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, her designer heels clicking sharply against the wood as she marched toward me. "I thought you were in Africa." "Surprise," I said coolly, adjusting my blazer as I walked toward her. "I caught an early flight." David stayed behind, eyes wary. He'd always been uncomfortable around me, probably because he sensed that I saw through his charming, slick exterior. "You didn't need to come," Rachel said, her voice clipped. "Everything's handled, the sale's final." "About that," I replied, pulling out my phone just as a third vehicle turned into the driveway. "We need to talk." Benjamin Wong stepped out of his Mercedes, a briefcase in hand. Rachel's eyes narrowed at the sight of our father's old lawyer. "What's he doing here?" "Mr. Wong," I said, ignoring her question. Perfect timing. The demolition foreman approached, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Harrison," he said to Rachel, "we're ready for the internal inspection." "Actually," I interjected, "you'll need to hold off on that. There's something we need to address first." Rachel's laugh was sharp, tinged with nervousness. "There are no issues. I had power of attorney. The sale is legitimate." Benjamin opened his briefcase, his tone precise. "The power of attorney was for medical emergencies only. It did not grant you the authority to sell jointly owned property." Rachel's face reddened. "That's not true. I had it reviewed by David's cousin, who just passed the bar." I finished for her. "I'm sure he did an excellent job." The foreman glanced between us, clearly sensing the rising tension. "Should we come back another time?" he asked. "No," Rachel said quickly. "Proceed with the inspection. My sister's just making a scene." "Actually," Benjamin said, pulling a document from his briefcase, "I have a court order preventing any demolition or alterations to this property pending an investigation into what we believe is a fraudulent sale." Rachel's confident veneer cracked. "Fraudulent? I had every right to sell a $3 million property for $800,000? I asked, my voice quiet but cold. "To use a medical power of attorney for a real estate transaction? To facilitate what appears to be a deliberate undervaluation of the property?" David stepped forward, his smile still in place. "Look, Emma, if you're upset about the price, maybe we can." "This isn't about the price," I cut him off. "This is about what's inside the house." Rachel rolled her eyes, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. "Inside? It's empty. We cleared everything out months ago." I turned to Benjamin. "Shall we show them?" He nodded, pulling out another document. "Miss Chin, would you like to do the honors?" I led them through the house, down the familiar halls to the library. Rachel's heels echoed on the hardwood floor, and I could feel her anxiety building as we walked. "What is this about, Emma?" she demanded, impatience edging her voice. "If you're trying to stop the sale, it's too late for that." I stopped in front of the bookshelf where our father had always loved to sit. "The sale was invalid the moment you signed those papers," I said, turning to face her, "but that's not why I'm here." I reached for the hidden latch behind Shakespeare's complete works, the one Dad had shown me all those years ago. With a quiet click, the bookshelf swung open to reveal the hidden room beyond. Rachel gasped. David cursed under his breath. The foreman took a quick step back. What is this?" Rachel whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "This," I said, stepping into the dim concrete room, "is our father's real legacy, the one he didn't trust you to know about." I knelt in front of the safe embedded in the concrete floor, the key turning easily in the lock. Inside lay decades of our father's meticulous work, property deeds, account statements, corporate documents, all the secrets he'd hidden to protect this empire. Benjamin began laying the papers out on a nearby table. "Your father," he said, "was more than just a librarian. For 30 years, He quietly built one of the largest private real estate portfolios in Massachusetts, all under aliases, all perfectly legal, all hidden, until now. Rachel stared at the documents, her face draining of color. "How much?" she asked, voice trembling. Benjamin glanced up from the papers. "The current market value is estimated at $15 million. David's eyes bulged. Rachel, wide-eyed, gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "And you," I said, turning to my sister, "tried to sell the corporate headquarters of this empire for $800,000 to a shell company I suspect is owned by David or one of his associates." David stumbled back, but Benjamin's assistant was already blocking the doorway. "The FBI is very interested in this transaction," I continued, my voice steady, "especially given David's history with failed investments and the suspicious timing of this sale." Rachel's legs gave out. She sank into our father's old leather chair, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You knew," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You knew all this time." "Dad told me everything before he died," I confirmed, my words cold but unwavering. "He made me promise to protect it until the right time." "And you didn't tell me?" Her voice cracked. "Raw, I'm your sister." I paused, looking at her, not just seeing her face, but everything she represented, the designer clothes, the perfect makeup, the entitled attitude that had shaped her life, all the things she'd used to mask the emptiness within. "Dad knew you weren't ready," I said softly, my gaze unwavering, "and he was right. The first chance you got, you tried to sell his life's work for pennies on the dollar." Benjamin cleared his throat. "The FBI agents are waiting outside. They have questions about the attempted sale and the potential fraud involved." Rachel snapped her head up. "Fraud? But I had power of attorney." "A medical power of attorney," I corrected her, my tone firm. "Using it for real estate transactions is fraud. Selling property below market value to a connected party is fraud. And doing all of that without proper authority is fraud." 6 months later, I sat in Benjamin Wong's office, signing the final papers that would restructure our father's empire. Rachel and David were both facing federal fraud charges, their assets frozen while the investigation continued. "Everything's in order," Benjamin said, sliding the papers into his briefcase. "The foundation is established, and the scholarship fund will launch next month." I nodded, feeling a quiet satisfaction. My father would have approved. The bulk of his fortune was now earmarked for scholarships, opening doors for students who, like him, believed in the quiet power of knowledge. His secret empire was becoming a force for good. "Have you heard from Rachel?" Benjamin asked carefully. "Not since the indictment," I replied, my voice distant. "She tried calling a few times, alternating between threats and tearful pleas for help, but after I testified about her misuse of the power of attorney, she finally understood there was no going back." The house still stood, but I had it completely renovated. The hidden room was now a secure office, and its existence was documented. The demolition company had been exposed as a front for David's latest scheme. He'd planned to flip the property for its true value once the fraudulent sale went through. My phone buzzed, a message from the hospital in Uganda. "When are you coming back? We miss our best surgeon." I smiled, feeling the pull of a life I had chosen. Rachel had always thought my work in Uganda was an escape. She never understood that I had chosen that path because I could, because our father had secretly ensured we'd never want for anything. "The FBI finished their asset trace," Benjamin said, pulling up some documents. "David had set up an elaborate network of shell companies. He was planning to use your father's house as collateral for some substantial loans." "Let me guess," I said dryly, "more investment opportunities." Benjamin nodded, sliding another document toward me. "Rachel claims she didn't know the full extent of his plans." "She knew enough," I replied, leaning back in my chair. The evidence had been clear: emails, phone records, bank transfers, all showing she was fully complicit in the scheme to defraud me. Standing by the window in Benjamin's office, I looked out at the Boston skyline. Somewhere, Rachel was preparing for her court date, still, no doubt, seeing herself as the victim in all this. "Your father would be proud," Benjamin said quietly, "not just of how you protected his legacy, but of what you're doing with it." The first recipients of the scholarship fund had already been selected: bright, ambitious students who reminded me of our father, the quiet ones, the planners, the ones who understood that success wasn't about shortcuts, but about long-term vision. My phone buzzed again, this time an email from the real estate management company. The first round of renovations on our father's properties was complete. What had once been hidden was now being transformed into affordable housing. community centers, and educational spaces. Do you ever regret it? Benjamin asked, his voice laced with curiosity. Exposing everything? You could have just stopped the sale quietly, kept the secret. I thought about Rachel's laugh during that late-night phone call, how she'd dismissed everything our father had built with such casual arrogance. No, I said firmly, some secrets need to be revealed, some lessons need to be learned. That evening, as I packed for my return to Uganda, I came across an old photo album. In it was a picture of Rachel and me as children, sitting in our father's library, surrounded by the books that concealed his empire. We were smiling, oblivious to the secrets that lay beneath the surface. I closed the album, thinking about how differently things had turned out. Rachel had thought she was seizing an opportunity, never imagining she was actually destroying her own future. I had become the keeper of our father's legacy, not just preserving his wealth, but transforming it into something meaningful. The next morning, as my plane took off for Uganda, I received one final text from Benjamin. Guilty plea entered. Rachel took a deal, 3 years with restitution. I turned off my phone and watched Boston shrink beneath the clouds. 3 years was nothing compared to the lifetime of trust she'd shattered, but maybe, just maybe, it would be enough time for her to understand what our father had known all along. True wealth isn't about money. True success isn't built on shortcuts and schemes. As for me, I had patients to treat, a waiting list to serve, and a legacy to fulfill. Rachel had tried to sell our father's house for a quick profit, never knowing she was sitting on an empire, but in the end, the house had kept its secrets until the right moment, just as our father had planned. Sometimes, I thought as the plane headed east, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's dreams. Sometimes, it's about fulfilling your own, and letting them watch from the sidelines as you build something greater than they ever imagined. The house still stands in Boston, its secrets now transformed into opportunities for others. And somewhere in Uganda, there's a hospital where a surgeon works to save lives, carrying on a different kind of legacy. One that can't be measured in dollars or deeds, but in lives touched and change made. That's the thing about legacy, after all. It's not just about what you leave behind. It's about what you choose to build with what you've been given. And I chose to build something worth more than all the quick profits Rachel had ever dreamed of. That's the revenge that would have made our father proud.